when it comes to the crypto Web3 space in general, I think according to Coin Market Cap, I think the market cap for all crypto gaming is 16 billion at the moment, if I'm correct. So where do you see the growth for that? Because if you look at like Activision Blizzard, I think their market cap is 74 billion and the entire Web3 gaming space is 16.
Sure.
So,
but how many users are in the Web3 gaming space versus how many users does Activision have, for instance, right? So that's the paradigm to look at.
Yeah.
That's 3.4 billion people who play games. There's, a single-digit percentage of that's currently playing Web3 games. But that wasn't that different from mobile gaming back in the early days, for instance, where a small number of people playing mobile games, and now today it's become essentially the predominant form of user engagement. I think it's exactly the same. One of the challenges that we've had around Web3 gaming wasn't necessarily the games itself. It was actually distribution outlets. The distribution outlets, which were before Apple and Facebook and Google and Steam, they actually banned NFTs for a while, right?
Yeah.
And even now, Apple said, okay, you can have NFTs, but you can't have utility in them. So what's the point, right? You can just display them. What's the point in that, right? So they're still trying to restrict it, which is why, for instance, we became big investors and supporters of Telegram, right? Because last year, and of course now there's big narratives around why Telegram could become really big. And it has proven with, things like Gamey or, what you see, for instance, with like Notcoin or with Hamster Combat, that is able to sort of grow users at a very large level, but with games that seem very primitive, very similar to the kind of games that were popular in 2010, 2011 in mobile. So to me, this is just history repeating itself. And so I look at it from the perspective of you've got, as you say, 16, maybe $20 billion market cap over a very small base. Imagine what that number looks like when you actually have 1 billion people playing games. I think it's going to blow things like
So
Activision
what kind
out
of
the water.
projection do you think we're capable of in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think gaming will be $1 trillion market.
Yeah.
Right, through Web3. And that has a lot to do with the fact that when you have our sort of mental model is looking at it like an economy. Every country that has property rights in which the end users get to own a stake of whatever network or ecosystem that they have, right? And a respect for that, the GDPs are all significantly higher, including the related freedoms, right? So you have much higher GDPs in Hong Kong or in Switzerland than, say, North Korea, right? North Korea has a population that's 10 times the size of Singapore or Switzerland, but its GDP is significantly smaller. So it has nothing to do with the number of people. What's the difference? One is a property rights loving capitalist framework, and the other one is clearly not, right? And that's basically what we think will happen in Web3 gaming as well. This is where you get hundreds of millions of people, to come in to own their assets. And I think there's also different places in the world where it's going to go faster. For instance, the countries that are more pro-capitalist in Asia, for instance, or the Middle East, are more prone to growing faster because they understand the benefits and they value that. Where certain other countries that are a little bit more socialist leaning or sometimes very socialist leaning are actually against it because they are concerned about money. They don't understand it. The term they use is over-financification, which really is more like that seems wrong, right? But they don't have a really good reason because it feels unfair to them because they don't understand it. And that's the narrative that you see amongst young people in the US, amongst a certain group of people, for instance, who are anti-Web3 gaming because they are frankly more socialist-minded, I think. When you think about game design in the West and the East, it's different as well. In the West, a lot of game designers are designing games to be, frankly, very socialist, I would argue, right? It's like, you buy an item, it doesn't give you an advantage. But that's not how the real world works, right? I mean, I get to live in a nice district. I buy a more expensive home. That gives me status and value. Yeah. That gives me an advantage, for instance, right? So capitalism works differently in the real world. It's been removed in much of the game design of the Web2 world in the West, but in the East, it's completely okay. That's why I think Asia has led in the past and will continue to lead in Web3 gaming until it just takes over the world, which is, by the way, what happened with free-to-play gaming, right? Freemium business model gaming was rejected in the West for years.